For today's project, we're going to make this cute little fall sign. Starting off on Design Space, go to Canvas. And then go down to the bottom and click Shapes. And for this project, we're going to do Circle. And then for the circle, we're going to change the size of it. You can go down to the bottom and we're going to click on Edit. And then it'll bring up the size category. We're going to change that to 14. And then that brings up our 14-inch circle. And then I'm going to change this, instead of the basic cut, to guide. So click on the basic cut, go down to the bottom and select guide. And then apply. And that will bring it up as a guide on your canvas. This image won't cut. Then go down and upload at the bottom and browse files. And we're going to do this Hello Fall. Click Save. And then we're going to change the size. So we're going to change this to 14 to fit our circle. And then once you have that size, you can click Layers. And we're going to hide that guide, so we don't need that anymore. And then click Shapes and go to Square. This is where we're going to slice out some of our image because it's too big for our mat. Make sure your image is ungrouped before we do the slicing. Go to Edit, and we're going to change it to 3 inches so we can slice that leaf out. Click Square and the fall basic cut and click Slice. Remove that layer. And we're going to keep the gold colored leaf, and then we're going to remove the layer that's underneath of that. So you can click on the other gray leaf and delete that image. We're going to hide this layer. You can find that in the Layers panel. Click on Shapes, click Square, and this one we're going to make about 11.5 inches. So click on Edit, change the size to 11.5, and then move that square over so you only have that small spot sticking out right there on the right side. I ended up not even using that piece sticking out there. And then click on Layers, click the square, and then click Slice Result. And then go to Actions and Slice. And then we're going to remove 2 layers like we did last time. The back layer, delete that, and the middle layer, delete that. Make everything in the place where you need it. And then we're ready to make it. Now we're ready to paint. I'm using a 14-inch wood round from Hobby Lobby. I'm using the Waverly white chalk paint. And you just give it a good coat there. I think I only did 1 coat on it. So for the measurements, I just measured my vinyl decal, stencil, and then I marked where that would be on the wood round, which would be 4 inches from the bottom. And then I made a line to separate that. I'm just using painter's tape to mark those off and get it the good crisp lines whenever I go to paint that brown section for the fall. And once you got your lines marked on there, you put the painter's tape down right on your line. Make sure you press it down real good. That way you get a nice, clean, crisp line where you're painting. All right, I don't know what happened to the footage of me putting my transfer tape on, but I use a clear contact paper from Dollar Tree, and I just peel off the backing and apply it to my vinyl decal or stencil, however I want to use it. And then for this one here, I'm going to cut off that bottom circle because it's not needed for this design. I'm going to end up painting that spot with paint anyway, so I just went ahead and cut that bottom strip of vinyl off. And then I'm just making sure that my decal was going to fit inside my spots before I painted. I'm going to use the Truffle by Waverly Chalk Paint for the brown. I gave it one good coat of paint and let it dry a decent amount of time. And I'm using a mini chip brush to apply the paint. And then I like to remove the tape after it's dried about halfway. That way you get those crisp lines in there. And then for that gold color, I'm using this yellow ochre acrylic paint that I had. And I didn't like the color of it coming out, so I mixed some of the white Waverly Chalk Paint with it to kind of tone it down a little bit. And then I line my my decal up where I'm going to put it to make sure that I got it in the right spot. Everything's lined up where I want it to be. And then once I have it in place, I take a piece of painter's tape and I go right down the center. And I start from one end and I peel it up to the tape, remove my backing sheet with scissors, and then apply it down to my project. And then I do the same thing with the other side. I just remove the tape this time and then remove the vinyl backing and apply the vinyl down to my project. And then before I put my stencil down, I did add a coat of Mod Podge to the surface, avoiding the spot where the hole was, because I knew I wanted to add something there, and the hot glue wouldn't stick to the Mod Podge. And then I let the Mod Podge dry completely before I added my vinyl stencil. And then I remove the transfer tape off of it, leaving my stencil there. Make sure it's all down all the way, adhered to the wood. And then I use my matte Mod Podge to apply a layer of it to the vinyl where I'm going to be painting. And I use painter's tape to section off some areas so I don't get it all over the other areas. And you just put a nice good coat of Mod Podge, go in different directions. That way you get it nice and coated in the edges so you can get those crisp, clean lines. And then once you get that covered, you're gonna let that Mod Podge dry completely until it's dry on its own. And then once your Mod Podge dries, you're gonna take that gold paint and a dabber brush, and you're gonna dab all over the top of the Hello Fall, and then the bottom where the leaves are, you're gonna cover all of that with a good coat of paint. And then once that paint dries on its own, you're gonna go ahead and remove your stencil off of there. I try to remove mine off easy so I don't rip anything. If anything starts to pull up, I can usually fix it. So don't pull it too fast, or you might be able to not fix something that rips up. Now is the fun part. You can see everything starting to take shape from all of your hard work. I feel like a couple of extra steps in here makes it look a lot nicer. It's a little bit more time consuming, but I do like the end results. And now we're going to get the leaf part ready for almost the last step for this. So I'm just adding the clear vinyl that I get from Dollar Tree. It works really good for transfer tape. And once we get it where we want it, we're going to add a strip of tape down the center to hold it in place. And we're going to remove one side of the vinyl, cut off the backing sheet, and then apply the vinyl to our project. And then once we have that down, we're going to do the same thing with the other side, but you can actually remove your tape this time. And then once you got it down real good, you can remove the transfer tape. Again, pulling off slowly so you don't rip anything. I actually pulled one of the pieces of the leaves up too far. Then we're going to take our matte Mod Podge and we're going to put a coating down where we're going to be painting the leaves. I put a light coat down. Make sure you go in all directions to fill in any of the cracks so you get the nice clean lines. And then I'm going to use the barn red for the two leaves that are red, and the one that's in the brown banner, I actually painted white so it stand out a little bit more. And then for this gold leaf, I just use the same color as the bottom of my sign and then the Hello Fall letters. My red paint was a little thin, so I had to do a couple of coats of that. And then once that dried completely, I took off the tape and then peeled off my vinyl stencil carefully so I didn't rip anything. Now this doesn't happen very often, but if you have a spot that does bleed through, it is easy to fix. You just take a little bit of the paint on the background and a thin brush and just lightly cover up the area. And then once everything dried completely, I covered it all with a coat of the matte Mod Podge, and I did cover it all the way up to about a third of the way to the top because I didn't want to cover where the hole was. I wanted to be able to add something there, and I know hot glue won't stick to the Mod Podge, so I did leave a section at the top that was empty from the Mod Podge so I could add a bow. If you don't plan on adding a bow, you can go ahead and cover the entire top. And then I took some floral that I had laying around the house and I cut the ends off of this glittery stems. And I'm going to glue those together and put those in the center of my circle. Just add a good dab of hot glue before you stick your twigs down there. And I also added a little bit of these raffia that came from a Halloween pick that I had. Now I'm using this twine that I had. I cut it to about 8 inches for the hanger, and I just thread it in through the hole and make a knot at the bottom and secure that. And you won't see the knot because the bow will be right there in the middle hiding that. And then this piece of burlap is 9 inches long, and I fold it in the middle to meet both ends, flip it over, and add it to the top of my other bow there. And then you just start pinching it at the top and the bottom until you meet in the center. And then I just got a piece of embroidery thread and tied it in the center and added a dab of hot glue to kind of keep it in place. And then this piece of burlap ribbon is for the center. It is 4 inches long, and I fold that in 3. And then you wrap that around the center and you glue it in place in the back with hot glue. I always hate this part because I always burn myself, so I'm waiting on a pair of heat-resistant gloves to come from Temu. So look forward to that unboxing. Now that we have our bow done, I like to cut the tails. So I'm going to fold them in half. And then I'm going to start there at the bottom and cut my way up. And then that just cuts both sides of that one tail at once for you. And then do the same thing to the other side. And now our bow is complete. Now we can add our bow to the center of the glittery floral we just added. So put a dab of hot glue on the back of the bow and put it right in the center. I thought some of the glittery floral was sticking out too far, so I went back in with my floral wire cutters and I trimmed off the ends on both sides to cut that down a little bit. And then I think the big leaf was a little too dark, or maybe my lighting was off. But if you decide to make this project, try to make your bigger leaf maybe a little bit brighter. I feel like mine kind of just blended in with the brown. But I think it turned out pretty great. And don't forget to subscribe. That way you know when I drop videos.